The crib should have been empty, but the German shepherd stood over it like a soldier guarding a secret only heaven had allowed him to hear. Logan Whitaker saw him through the half-open nursery door just after dawn, frozen in the pale blue light of a Tennessee morning, his black and tan body rigid, his ears high, his amber eyes fixed on the broken wooden rails beneath him. For a moment, Logan did not move. He had spent 12 years as a United States Marine, had learned to read silence the way other men read maps, and this silence felt wrong. Too still, too heavy. The house smelled of rain-soaked pine, cold coffee, baby powder, and something faintly electrical, like an old outlet warming behind a wall. Outside, the last drops of a spring storm slid from the gutters and tapped against the porch rail in a slow, uneven rhythm. Inside, every small sound seemed too loud. The hum of the refrigerator, the soft tick of a hallway clock, the quiet breath of Ranger, his retired K-9 partner, standing between Logan and the crib as if the floor beyond that threshold had become a battlefield no one else could see. Logan had only come to check the property after his sister, Nora, failed to answer 3 morning calls. She lived alone at the edge of Cedar Hollow with her 2-month-old daughter, Lily, in a white farmhouse bordered by soybean fields and a narrow county road. Nora was careful. She was the kind of woman who locked the door even in daylight, who labeled medicine bottles twice, who left emergency numbers taped beside the kitchen phone, though everyone used cell phones now. When she did not answer, Logan told himself not to panic. Maybe she was sleeping. Maybe Lily had kept her up all night. Maybe the storm had knocked out service again. But Ranger had known before the truck reached the driveway. The old shepherd had lifted his head from the passenger seat, nostrils wide, body tightening under the worn leather collar Logan had kept from their last deployment. He did not bark. Ranger almost never wasted breath. He only pressed his nose to the cracked window and gave one low whine. The same warning sound that had once stopped Logan from stepping into danger half a world away. That sound had followed Logan into the house. It followed him past the damp welcome mat, past the living room where a baby blanket lay folded over the couch, past the kitchen where a bottle sat untouched in a bowl of warm water gone cold. Nora was not there. Her purse was on the table. Her keys were beside it. The back door was shut. No drawers were open. Nothing looked taken. Nothing looked wild. And somehow, that made the quiet worse. Ranger led him down the hall with careful steps, claws clicking softly on the old hardwood. The nursery door was cracked open, moving a little in the draft from the vent. A hand-painted wooden sign hung from it by a white ribbon. Lily Grace, it read, the letters surrounded by tiny yellow stars. Logan remembered hanging that sign himself while Nora laughed from the rocking chair, exhausted and happy, one hand resting on her daughter swaddled against her chest. Now the ribbon trembled though no one touched it. Ranger stopped at the doorway, shoulder muscles shifting beneath his coat. Logan whispered his name, but the dog did not look back. He stepped into the nursery and stood over the crib. Only then did Logan see the broken rail. One side had cracked inward, not shattered, not thrown apart, but folded at a strange angle, low enough to trap the small pink blanket that had slipped between the bars. The mobile above the crib turned slowly, though there was no wind, its little cloth clouds drifting in a crooked circle. Logan felt his heartbeat change. He took one step forward. Ranger let out a sound so low it seemed to come from the floorboards. Not a threat, a command. Wait. Logan stopped. He knew that tone. Ranger had used it when the world looked ordinary but was not. The Marine in him obeyed before the brother in him could rush forward. He lowered himself, inch by inch, until his eyes were level with the mattress. At first, he saw only the blanket, the sagging crib rail, the white crib sheet printed with tiny blue moons. Then something moved. Small, weak, almost hidden in the shadow where the mattress had dipped against the cracked frame. A tiny hand opened and closed once, no bigger than a folded leaf. Logan forgot how to breathe. Lily was there, tucked low beneath the collapsed side, her face turned partly away, her breathing shallow but steady, wrapped in the blanket that had kept her from sliding farther into the gap. Ranger had not been guarding an empty crib. He had been guarding time itself. Logan reached for his phone, but his hand shook hard enough that he had to steady it against his knee. The screen showed one bar. Enough. He called 911, his voice quiet and clipped, giving the address, the infant, the broken crib, the need for medical help. The dispatcher stayed on the line, calm and firm, asking questions Logan answered like a man reciting coordinates. All the while, Ranger stood over Lily without touching her, every part of him alert, every breath measured, as if he understood that one wrong movement could turn mercy into harm. Logan slid one hand beneath the safe side of the mattress, testing the weight, listening to the small creak of stressed wood. The crib shifted half an inch. Lily made the faintest sound. Ranger lowered his head, not to interfere, but to place his nose near her tiny foot, warm breath brushing the blanket. The baby stirred again. That little movement broke something open in Logan's chest. He thought of all the nights after leaving the Corps when he had believed his best years of service were behind him, when the uniform in the closet felt like a memory no longer needed by the world. Yet here, in a quiet nursery painted cream and soft green, with rain tapping the windows and a dog standing like a prayer in fur and bone, duty had found him again. Not loud, not grand, just a child breathing in the shadow of a broken crib, and one loyal K-9 refusing to let the silence win. Logan Whitaker remained crouched by the crib, his hands hovering just above the soft blanket that cocooned Lily, listening to the faint rhythm of her breathing as Ranger shifted slightly, muscles rippling beneath his sleek coat, amber eyes never leaving the child. The air in the room felt heavy with the residue of the storm outside, damp wood and faint traces of rainwater clinging to the floorboards, and Logan could hear the slow drip of water from the gutters, the occasional sigh of wind through the cracks in the window frame. He allowed himself a moment to scan the room once more, noting the subtle movement of the mobile clouds above Lily, the soft hum of the heaters cycling on and off, and the quiet patterns of dust drifting in the shafts of morning light that angled through the broken blinds. Each detail was amplified by the tension of the moment, each shadow carrying the possibility of something overlooked. Logan gently adjusted the blanket around Lily, ensuring that her tiny hands were free from the edges of the damaged crib and that she remained swaddled safely, his fingers brushing lightly against her skin as he listened to her quiet coos. Ranger moved closer, nudging Logan's leg with his nose as if to remind him of his presence and the unspoken rules of their teamwork, the same instincts that had guided them through training exercises and deployments, now applied to the fragile life of an infant. The dog's posture remained alert, every hair along his spine taut with focus, yet there was a softness in his eyes as he looked at Logan, a shared understanding that had formed over years of service and countless silent communications. Logan reached for his phone again, this time steadying it against the edge of the crib, and spoke calmly to the dispatcher, providing exact directions to the house, describing the child's condition and the broken crib, all while maintaining a vigilant eye on the space around them. Ranger circled the crib, scanning for any subtle dangers that Logan might not see, his tail low but stiff, and every sense of the dog seemed attuned to the smallest shifts in the room. Logan could not help but feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, the way he had felt in moments on deployment when every decision, every movement, carried consequences far beyond himself. Yet there was no panic, only precision, as he leaned over to check the mattress support and confirm that Lily remained clear of the broken section, gently lifting the blanket to observe her small form, noting the rise and fall of her chest. The infant's tiny fingers flexed and curled as if testing the world around her, a delicate signal that she was responding to the environment, alive and alert beneath the watchful gaze of Ranger. Outside, the light continued to shift, turning the walls of the nursery from pale blue to a soft cream as the morning sun broke through lingering clouds, the movement casting elongated shadows that danced across the floorboards and over the edges of furniture, highlighting the broken crib's jagged lines and the careful positioning of the blanket beneath the child. Logan whispered reassurances under his breath, a mantra of calm and control, and Ranger's ears flicked in response, the dog's body language confirming that their joint attention was aligned and that the child remained safe for the time being. Minutes stretched with the quiet intensity of the storm having passed, but left the air charged, each breath of wind through the slightly open window sounding louder than it should, each small creak in the floorboards drawing Logan's attention back to the gravity of the scene. The dispatcher's voice offered measured instructions, and Logan followed them with methodical care, setting up a clear path for emergency personnel while maintaining his protective posture over Lily. Ranger adjusted slightly, placing a paw gently near the crib's base, a silent act of vigilance, as if marking his territory in service and protection. Logan's eyes met the dog's, and in that instant, a deep sense of gratitude passed between them, an acknowledgement of the shared mission and the unspoken bond forged over countless trials and quiet moments of trust. The baby stirred, lifting her tiny head just enough to peek through the folds of the blanket, and Logan could feel his heart shift at the sight, a mixture of relief and awe. Ranger let out a soft exhale, the tension in his shoulders easing fractionally, though his attention never wavered, demonstrating a profound awareness of their purpose and the fragile gift of life before them. Logan allowed himself a single breath, slow and controlled, acknowledging the calm but preparing for the continued vigilance that would be required until help arrived, knowing that in these quiet moments, every detail, every sound, every movement mattered, and that the bond between man and dog had once again created a small miracle in the world. The sirens were still far away when Ranger changed. It was not a bark. It was not even a growl at first. It was a tightening, a shift so small most people would have missed it, but Logan had spent years trusting that dog's body before trusting his own eyes. Ranger's ears angled toward the hallway. His nose lifted. His chest went still. Logan, still kneeling beside the crib with one hand lightly bracing the mattress, turned his head and listened. At first, all he heard was the house breathing around them. The old heater clicked in the wall. Rainwater tapped from the roof into the metal downspout. Somewhere beyond the nursery, a floorboard settled with a soft wooden sigh. Then Lily made a faint sound, not a cry, not quite, just a thin breath catching in her throat, and Ranger stepped backward from the crib, placing himself between the infant and the doorway. Logan felt the temperature in the room seem to drop. He spoke quietly into the phone, telling the dispatcher he heard movement in the house. The woman on the line told him to stay calm, to remain with the baby, to keep the path clear for responders. Logan did not argue. His eyes stayed on Ranger. The German Shepherd's focus had narrowed to the hallway beyond the painted sign on the door, beyond the family photographs that lined the wall, beyond the pale spill of light coming from the kitchen. Logan slowly rose, careful not to jostle the crib, and took one step toward the doorway. Ranger did not look back, but his tail lowered another inch, and Logan understood. Not yet. The warning landed in him like a hand on the chest. He looked down at Lily. Her face was flushed from effort, her tiny mouth opening and closing against the blanket, her lashes damp with the remains of sleep and distress. She had no idea the world around her had become so fragile. That innocence steadied him more than fear ever could. Logan scanned the nursery again, slower this time. The cracked crib rail, the crooked mobile, the blanket pulled tight under one side, the window latch not fully locked, a framed ultrasound photograph on the dresser, a small white noise machine sitting near the outlet, silent though its power light still glowed blue. Something about that silence bothered him. Nora always kept the white noise machine on for Lily. She said it sounded like rain, and Lily slept better when the room whispered. Logan moved toward it, keeping one eye on Ranger and one on the crib. He touched the top of the machine. Warm. Too warm. Not dangerous by itself, but wrong. The cord had been pulled halfway from the wall, bent under the edge of the dresser leg, and beside it lay a glass of water that had tipped onto the carpet, leaving a dark, damp crescent spreading toward the baseboard. Logan crouched and unplugged the machine with 2 fingers, moving slowly, deliberately, the way he had been taught to handle anything uncertain. A small spark snapped in the outlet, tiny and brief, but Ranger turned his head sharply toward it. Logan froze. The smell he had noticed earlier, faintly electrical, rose a little stronger now, threading through the baby powder and rain. His heart sank with understanding. The broken crib was not the only danger. It was the visible one, the one anyone would have noticed after it was too late. Ranger had sensed the whole room, the pattern of wrongness no human mind could gather quickly enough. Logan told the dispatcher about the outlet, the damp carpet, and the infant still partially trapped but breathing. Her voice changed slightly, staying calm but firmer now, instructing him to avoid the wet area and wait for fire and medical personnel. Logan looked at the crib. Waiting was the safest order. Waiting was also the hardest thing a man could do when a baby was 6 feet away, small enough to fit in the crook of his arm, close enough to save, and still not close enough to move without risk. Ranger stepped to the side of the crib again, not into the damp area, never that, but near enough to lower his muzzle toward Lily. He made a soft sound, almost a hum, a low shepherd's murmur that seemed too gentle for an animal built with such strength. Lily responded. Her fingers opened. Her little face turned toward the warmth of his breath. Logan swallowed hard. The house had become a chapel of ordinary things. A broken crib, a dog's steady breathing, a Marine standing barefoot in his sister's nursery because he had forgotten he had stepped out of his boots at the door to keep from tracking mud across the floor. Then, from the hallway, came a sound that changed everything. A weak knock, not at the front door, from inside the house. Logan turned sharply, and Ranger moved with him, shoulders rising, eyes fixed down the hall. The knock came again, softer this time, from the direction of the laundry room near the back of the farmhouse. Logan called Nora's name. No answer came, only a faint scraping, then silence. For one terrible second, the room felt suspended between two needs, the baby in the crib and the unseen person beyond the hall. Logan closed his eyes just long enough to breathe once. When he opened them, Ranger had already chosen his position. He stood beside Lily, guarding her with the solemn patience of a creature who understood that loyalty sometimes meant staying while someone else had to go. Logan moved into the hallway with the phone still pressed to his ear, one hand lifted slightly, palm open, as if calm itself could be carried through a house. Behind him, Ranger remained in the nursery, a dark, steady shape beside the crib, his body angled toward Lily and his ears tracking Logan's every step. The hallway felt longer than it had when Logan first entered. Family photographs watched from both walls. Nora in a graduation gown, Nora holding Lily in a hospital blanket, Logan standing stiffly beside her in dress blues years earlier, trying not to smile and failing anyway. The glass over those memories caught the morning light in pale strips, and for a heartbeat he felt as though he was walking through every version of his sister at once. The dispatcher's voice stayed in his ear, calm and close, reminding him that emergency crews were on the way. Logan answered in a low voice. He was moving toward the laundry room. He had heard a knock from inside. The floorboards were cool beneath his socks. He noticed his own footprints in small traces of damp dust. Then another set of marks near the back hall, faint and uneven, leading from the kitchen toward the laundry room door. They were not large. They were not hurried. They looked like someone had tried to walk carefully, then lost the strength to finish. Logan's throat tightened. Nora, he called again, softer now. It is me, Logan. For several seconds, nothing answered except the weak buzz of an overhead light in the hallway and the far-off cry of sirens beginning to rise over the fields. Then came a sound from behind the laundry room door, not a voice, only a dull movement low against the wood. Logan reached the door and found it partly closed, blocked from the inside by something heavy enough to resist when he pushed. He did not force it. Not yet. He bent down, looking through the narrow gap near the hinge, and saw the edge of a laundry basket tipped sideways, towels spilled across the floor, and beyond them, his sister's hand. She was lying on the floor, conscious enough to move her fingers, not enough to speak. I found Nora, he told the dispatcher, his voice still controlled, though something old and frightened had woken beneath it. She is breathing. She is behind the laundry room door. I need medical for 2. The dispatcher asked him what he could see, whether there was fire, whether she was responsive, whether he could open the door safely. Logan answered each question, slow and exact. No visible fire. No smoke. Breathing. Weak movement. Door blocked. He pressed his shoulder gently against the door, not to break it, just to create enough space. The laundry basket shifted an inch. A bottle of detergent rolled across the tile with a hollow thump. Nora made a faint sound, and Logan stopped immediately. You are okay, he said, though he knew those words were never a promise. They were a bridge. I am here. Lily is breathing. Ranger is with her. At the sound of Lily's name, Nora's fingers moved again, curling against the floor as if trying to hold on to the only truth that mattered. Logan felt that movement go straight through him. He pushed the door again, slower this time, guiding the basket aside with his foot through the gap until he could slip into the room sideways. The laundry room smelled of clean cotton, damp towels, and the sharp sweetness of spilled detergent. A small window above the washer glowed with gray morning light. Nora lay on the tile in a robe and sweatpants, pale, frightened, her hair loose around her face. There was no visible injury, no chaos around her, only the quiet aftermath of something sudden. Logan knelt beside her, but did not crowd her. He checked the space around her, the position of her head, the rise and fall of her breathing. "Stay still," he whispered. "Help is almost here." Nora's lips moved. He leaned closer. Her voice was thin, hardly more than air. "Lily." Logan nodded, fighting the ache behind his eyes. "She is alive. Ranger found her. He stayed with her." Nora closed her eyes, and one tear slipped down toward her temple, not from despair, but from the release of a terror too large for words. In the nursery, Ranger gave one short bark. Logan turned his head sharply. It was not alarm. It was signal. One bark, controlled, deliberate, the way Ranger used to mark a change without panic. Then came Lily's cry, louder than before, a thin but living sound that carried down the hallway and filled the laundry room like sunrise entering a cellar. Nora heard it. Her fingers gripped Logan's sleeve with surprising strength. Logan smiled for the first time since entering the house, though his face felt cracked by worry. "That is her," he said. "That is your girl." Outside, the sirens grew close enough to shake faintly through the window glass. Red and white light began to pulse across the far wall, broken by tree branches and rain-streaked glass. Logan told the dispatcher the responders had arrived, then called out toward the front of the house, guiding them in with the authority of a man whose fear had learned discipline long ago. Boots sounded on the porch. Radios crackled. The front door opened, and suddenly the quiet farmhouse filled with careful voices, trained hands, and the clean urgency of help arriving in time. Logan stayed beside Nora until the first paramedic entered the laundry room, then looked back down the hall. Ranger was still in the nursery doorway, guarding the space between the baby and the world, his dark silhouette framed by soft morning light, and in that moment Logan understood that the dog had not simply found danger. He had divided his loyalty perfectly, holding one life safe while leading another one home. The paramedics moved through the farmhouse with a kind of practiced gentleness that made the chaos feel less like chaos and more like a hymn played by steady hands. One team went to Nora in the laundry room, kneeling beside her with calm voices and open medical bags, while another followed Logan toward the nursery, where Ranger still stood guard beside Lily's crib. The German shepherd did not move when they entered. He watched them, eyes bright and unblinking, measuring every stranger by breath, posture, and purpose. Logan placed a hand lightly on Ranger's shoulder. "Easy, partner," he whispered. "They are here to help." Only then did Ranger step back 2 inches, just enough to allow the paramedic nearest the crib to see the baby. The woman was in her early 40s, with kind brown eyes and a silver cross pinned to the strap of her equipment bag. Her name tag read Melissa Grant. She moved slowly, speaking to Lily before touching her, the way good people speak to small souls and frightened animals alike. "Hello, sweetheart," she said softly. "Let us get you safe." Logan stood close, but not in the way. Every instinct in him wanted to reach in, lift Lily, carry her out of that broken wooden trap himself. Yet he had learned long ago that courage sometimes meant stepping aside when someone else had the right hands for the moment. Melissa studied the crib, the collapsed rail, the slight dip in the mattress, the blanket caught beneath the frame. Her expression remained calm, but Logan saw the small change in her eyes. She understood what Ranger had understood first. One careless pull, one sudden shift, and the crib could close tighter around the child. "We are going to stabilize the side," Melissa said. Her partner, a younger paramedic named Aaron, placed a folded towel beneath the sagging rail and braced it with careful pressure while Logan held the opposite end of the crib steady. Ranger stood beside Logan's knee, his nose angled toward Lily, his breath slow and warm. Outside the nursery window, the fire engine's lights painted the wet glass red, then white, then red again, turning the room into something unreal, as if time itself were blinking. The mobile above the crib rotated once more, its little cloth clouds drifting over Lily's face. She cried then, not loud, but strong enough that every adult in the room seemed to breathe easier. Melissa smiled without looking away from her work. That is a good sound. Logan looked toward the hallway, where Nora was being lifted carefully onto a stretcher. Her face was turned toward the nursery, eyes searching until they found him. Logan nodded once, the kind of nod soldiers give when words would break something open. Nora's lips trembled. She tried to ask again, but no sound came. Logan answered anyway. She is fighting. Ranger heard Nora's voice, thin as it was, and turned his head toward her. For the first time since Logan had entered the house, the shepherd's stern focus softened. His ears lowered. His tail moved once, a small, solemn sweep. Nora saw him and broke into quiet tears. Not because she was afraid anymore, but because she understood. While she had been trapped behind a door, while her baby had lain silent in a damaged crib, this old dog had held the line for both of them. Melissa slipped one hand beneath Lily's shoulders, the other beneath her hips, waiting for Aaron to lift the pressure at the exact right second. On 3, she said. Logan tightened his grip on the crib. Ranger leaned forward, then stopped himself, obeying some invisible command older than training. 1, 2, 3. The rail rose just enough. Melissa lifted Lily free. For a heartbeat, nobody spoke. The baby left the shadow of the crib and came into the morning light wrapped in a pink blanket, small and damp-eyed and alive. Then Lily cried, full and sharp, filling the room with a sound that felt bigger than the farmhouse, bigger than the storm, bigger than the fear that had brought them all there. Logan shut his eyes. His hand remained on the crib, but his body seemed to lose the weight it had been carrying. Ranger stepped forward and gently touched his nose to the edge of Lily's blanket. Melissa did not stop him. Maybe she saw what everyone else was beginning to see. The dog was not curious. He was confirming, counting, making sure the little heartbeat he had guarded was still in the world. Aaron wrapped Lily in a thermal blanket and checked her breathing, her color, her tiny pulse. She looks stable, he said. We need to get her checked at the hospital, but she is responsive. Logan heard the words, but they reached him slowly, as if traveling through deep water. Stable, responsive, alive. In the hallway, Nora heard them too. She covered her face with one trembling hand as the paramedic beside her assured her they would take both mother and child together. Logan walked Lily out of the nursery beside Melissa, and Ranger followed so closely his shoulder brushed Logan's leg. When Nora saw her daughter, she reached out from the stretcher with what little strength she had. Melissa lowered Lily just enough for Nora to touch the baby's foot through the blanket. A mother's fingers. A baby's cry. A dog standing watch beneath the pulsing lights. Logan looked at Ranger, and for the first time that morning, the Marine inside him did not search for the next danger. He simply saw Grace, quiet and breathing, carried out of a broken room by people who had arrived just in time because a loyal dog refused to let silence have the final word. The ambulance lights cast a steady red glow across the farmhouse floor, flickering across the walls like a heartbeat in the early morning. Logan Whitaker walked slowly behind Melissa Grant as she carried Lily toward the stretcher, careful to keep Ranger between him and the nursery, the dog's gaze never leaving the baby. Each step was deliberate, measured, the hardwood floor beneath Logan's socks echoing softly through the otherwise quiet house. Ranger shifted slightly, tail low but firm, a living sentinel guiding the Marine and the paramedic in silent coordination. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving wet leaves scattered across the yard, reflecting the rising sun that peeked through the clouds in a pale golden wash. Logan breathed deeply, the air scented with damp pine and the lingering freshness of the storm. He glanced toward the nursery, where small details still held his attention. The tilted mobile, the now empty crib, the blanket tucked safely aside, and he felt a weight lift slightly from his chest. Melissa moved Lily to the stretcher with gentle precision, wrapping her in a thermal blanket that smelled faintly of lavender and clean cotton. Logan crouched next to Ranger, resting a hand lightly on the dog's shoulder. Ranger leaned into the touch but did not relax completely, as if the room still contained unseen currents of caution. Logan whispered, soft enough for only the dog to hear, words of acknowledgement and praise for a job well done. Ranger's ears twitched, eyes scanning every corner, but a single exhale seemed to confirm that the immediate danger had passed. Outside the farmhouse, Logan could hear the distant hum of additional emergency vehicles arriving, their tires crunching on the wet gravel drive, radios clicking with procedural calm. He allowed himself to step back, giving the paramedics space to complete their work, watching as Lily's small chest rose and fell steadily in the blanket, the fingers curling naturally, signaling life and responsiveness. The early sunlight stretched across the room now, illuminating the dust particles drifting lazily in the warm air, turning the space from tense shadow to a gentle tableau of safety. Logan noticed the walls, once gray in the dim light, now soft cream, and the framed photographs lining the hallway, catching reflections of red and white from the ambulance lights outside. He felt a quiet gratitude, the kind born not from words but from presence and action, the connection between human and canine that had ensured Lily's safety. Ranger stepped closer to the stretcher, tilting his head toward the baby, offering a silent inspection, and Logan saw in the dog's amber eyes an understanding, a recognition of the life that had been preserved. The paramedics carefully secured Lily in her carrier, and Logan made sure that Ranger remained alert, standing near the crib until the last checks were complete. He observed the small details, the blanket tucked neatly, the slight tilt of the mattress, the position of the crib rails, all stabilized. Logan's eyes met Ranger's, and the weight of the morning, the tension of the storm, the fragility of the infant's life, seemed to meld away in that moment of mutual acknowledgement. Outside, the sun broke further through the clouds, a pale warmth spreading across the yard and onto the farmhouse walls, marking the passage of a night that could have been catastrophic and a morning that was filled with cautious relief. The scent of wet pine mingled with the clean smell of the paramedic blankets, forming a comforting mix that filled the hallway as Lily was lifted gently into the waiting ambulance. Logan placed a steadying hand on Ranger's back, feeling the subtle rise and fall of the dog's muscles beneath his touch, and he spoke again, softly, words of reassurance for both the dog and the infant. Ranger gave a slight whine, an expression of concern that had softened into trust, and Logan understood that the bond between them had been reaffirmed, that the watchfulness and care of a loyal companion had once more ensured safety where it was needed most. The ambulance doors closed, muffling the sounds of the baby's movement, but not the sense of relief that filled the farmhouse. Logan followed briefly, making sure the paramedics had everything they needed, then stepped back into the hallway, feeling the warmth of the sunlight spill across the floor, across the empty nursery, across the room where Ranger stood, steadfast and unwavering. He allowed himself a slow breath, the kind that resets the body and mind after adrenaline, and for the first time that morning, Logan felt the quiet satisfaction of a mission accomplished without fanfare, without haste, but with complete dedication and presence. Ranger looked up at him once more, head tilted, eyes bright, and Logan nodded in response, knowing that in a few moments, the immediate danger would be behind them, yet the bond forged in these tense, quiet hours would remain, a testament to the trust and the silent communication between man and dog, and the miraculous preservation of a tiny life within the walls of a simple farmhouse. The ambulance had departed, leaving the driveway glistening with the remnants of the early morning rain, and Logan Whitaker stood at the threshold of the nursery, letting the sunlight wash over the floorboards that had borne witness to every tense second of the crisis. Ranger remained beside the crib, body rigid but calm, amber eyes following Logan with a trust that transcended words. The room smelled of warm blankets, faint soap, and the lingering trace of rain on the windowsill, a mixture that seemed to hold time in suspension. Logan crouched slightly, resting a hand lightly on Ranger's head, feeling the steady pulse beneath the fur, a rhythm that mirrored the small heartbeat of Lily who had been carried safely away. Outside, the wind shifted, brushing the leaves in the yard and carrying a gentle scent of the soybean fields beyond, a reminder that the world continued even after the extraordinary. Logan's gaze swept the room, the tilted mobile hanging quietly above, the small pile of folded blankets, the framed photographs on the walls capturing moments of ordinary happiness, all preserved now in a space that had felt like danger only moments before. Ranger moved slightly, paw brushing against the edge of the crib, and Logan felt the unspoken communication between them. The dog had held the line, had measured danger with precision, and now permitted the world to resume its ordinary rhythm. Logan allowed himself to breathe deeply, feeling a warmth spread across his chest, a slow release of tension he had carried unknowingly since stepping into the farmhouse. He thought of all the times in his service when patience had been as necessary as courage, when the weight of responsibility had demanded every ounce of focus, and he realized that those years had prepared him for this quiet victory, this ordinary miracle made extraordinary by presence and vigilance. He knelt beside Ranger, voice low, almost a whisper, "Good work, old friend," and felt the dog shift, ears flicking, tail brushing the floor in acknowledgement. The sunlight angled through the nursery window, catching dust particles that drifted lazily like tiny golden motes, turning the room into a space of almost sacred stillness. Logan's mind wandered briefly to the family outside the ambulance, Nora beside Lily, finally breathing easy, and he knew the impact of his and Ranger's actions would extend beyond these walls, carrying reassurance and life into hearts that had been terrified mere moments ago. Ranger padded to the doorway, looking back at Logan, reminding him that their task was not just about reaching the child, but about safeguarding the trust and bond that had been tested and proven. Logan rose fully, the morning air in the room cool against his skin, but the warmth of purpose steadied him. He moved toward the window and looked out at the yard, the driveway slick with rain, the trees shaking gently in the wind, and he felt a sense of calm settle over him. A quiet affirmation that diligence and attentiveness had created a small miracle in the lives of those who needed it most. Ranger followed, body close to Logan's leg, eyes scanning every angle of the room one last time before relaxing just enough to indicate that the immediate danger had passed. Logan crouched beside him again, running a hand along his back and feeling the firmness beneath the coat, a reminder that loyalty and focus could carry the weight of the world without complaint. The house was quiet except for the gentle hum of the heater, the subtle creak of settling floorboards, and the faint echo of distant sirens fading into the morning. Logan looked at the empty crib, its rails now still, the blanket folded safely, and he allowed himself a small, measured smile, the kind that carries relief, pride, and gratitude without words. Ranger's gaze met his once more, full of understanding and trust, and Logan felt the depth of their shared history, the quiet strength of two lives intertwined in purpose, and the affirmation that vigilance, care, and unwavering attention had preserved not only a fragile life, but the integrity of the bond between human and dog, a testament to the silent heroism that sometimes exists where words cannot reach. By the time Logan reached Cedar Hollow Medical Center, the rain had become only a memory on the pavement, shining in silver streaks beneath the late morning sun. The small hospital stood just off Highway 41, a low brick building with a white cross above the entrance and a row of American flags moving gently in the clean wind. Ranger sat upright in the passenger seat of Logan's truck, quieter than usual, his amber eyes fixed on the sliding glass doors where Nora and Lily had been taken minutes earlier. He had not slept. He had barely blinked. Even after the farmhouse emptied, even after the fire crew checked the outlet, even after a county deputy taped off the nursery so the crib could be examined, Ranger had refused to leave until Logan touched the broken rail and told him the mission had moved. Only then had the German shepherd followed him outside, stepping through puddles with the slow dignity of an old soldier leaving a post he had held through the dark. Now, in the hospital parking lot, Logan rested both hands on the steering wheel and listened to the engine tick as it cooled. For a moment, he did not open the door. Hospitals had their own weather, their own smell, antiseptic, coffee, polished floors, worry held under fluorescent light. He had spent enough time in them to know that relief could still carry fear inside it. Ranger nudged his elbow once, firm but gentle. Logan looked at him. "I know," he said softly. "We go in together." A nurse at the front desk started to explain that dogs were not normally allowed past the lobby, but stopped when she saw the vest Logan had clipped over Ranger's shoulders, the worn patch that read retired military working dog, and the quiet way the animal stood beside him without pulling, without asking for anything, without taking his eyes off the hallway. An older security officer stepped forward, looked at Ranger, then at Logan's faded Marine Corps sweatshirt, and simply nodded. "Family room is down the hall, sir." Logan thanked him, and Ranger walked at his left side, paws soundless on the polished floor. In room 118, Nora lay propped against white pillows, pale but awake, her hair brushed back from her face by a nurse who had clearly understood that dignity mattered even in exhaustion. Lily rested in a clear bassinet near the bed, wrapped in a clean hospital blanket with a little pink cap on her head. The machines beside her made soft, steady sounds. Nothing urgent, nothing frantic, just proof. Nora turned when Logan entered, and her eyes found Ranger first. The room went still. Ranger did not rush. He crossed the distance slowly, stopping beside Nora's bed as if asking permission from the woman whose child he had guarded. Nora reached down with trembling fingers. Ranger lowered his head beneath her hand. The first touch broke her composure. She covered her mouth, breathing through tears that came silently, the kind that arrive only after fear has finally let go. "You stayed with her," she whispered. Ranger closed his eyes. Logan stood near the door, arms folded, watching the two of them with the ache of a man seeing mercy wear fur and scars. Nora looked up at him then, guilt moving across her face before she could hide it. "I remember putting Lily down after the feeding," she said, voice rough but clear. The storm was loud. The lights flickered. "I went to the laundry room to get towels because the window had leaked near the hallway. Then I felt dizzy. I tried to get back to her, Logan. I tried." Logan crossed the room and took her hand before she could say anything else. "You did get back to her," he said. "You called me. Maybe not with your phone. Maybe not with your voice. But somehow we came." Nora looked toward Ranger, who had moved to the bassinet now, standing a respectful foot away, nose lifted just enough to scent Lily's breath. The baby stirred, one tiny hand rising from the blanket, fingers opening toward nothing and everything. Ranger's ears softened. He sat down beside the bassinet with a care so gentle it seemed learned from prayer rather than training. Dr. Mason, a gray-haired pediatrician with calm eyes and a stethoscope tucked into his coat pocket, entered quietly and reviewed the chart with Nora. Mild stress. No serious injury. Observation for the day. A blessing, he called it. Not in the dramatic way people use when they do not know what else to say, but in the low, honest tone of a man who had seen enough close calls to recognize one that ended kindly. He glanced at Ranger and smiled. That dog bought her time. Logan looked down at the shepherd. Ranger did not react to the praise. He was watching Lily. Always watching. Nora reached for Logan's wrist. "The crib," she said. It was new. Logan nodded. "The deputy said they will look at it. The outlet, too. Maybe the storm, maybe a bad rail, maybe all of it at once." Nora closed her eyes, absorbing the thin line between ordinary and unthinkable. Logan did not fill the silence. Some silences are not empty. Some are where gratitude gathers itself before it can stand. A few minutes later, a nurse rolled in a chair so Logan could sit beside the bassinet, and Ranger settled at his feet, finally allowing his body to lower fully to the floor. His head rested on Logan's shoe, but his eyes remained open. Lily breathed. Nora breathed. Logan breathed. 3 rhythms in a hospital room washed with late morning light. Outside the window, water slipped from the last leaves after the storm, falling 1 drop at a time onto the sill. Logan looked at the baby, then at his sister, then at the dog who had heard danger inside silence, and he understood that not every rescue arrives with shouting. Some come on quiet pause. Some stand over a broken place and refuse to move until love finds its way through the door. The day stretched onward in quiet reverence as Logan Whitaker sat beside the hospital bassinet, watching Lily sleep with the soft, even breaths of a life restored. Ranger lay at his feet, head resting lightly against the floor, eyes open and attentive, ears flicking occasionally at the distant sounds of hospital activity, the hushed conversation of nurses in the hallway, the soft whir of a cart on linoleum, the faint beeping of monitors outside their room. Sunlight moved across the walls in pale stripes, catching dust particles in midair, each one suspended like a tiny fragment of calm in a world that had been minutes ago suspended on tension. Logan's hand remained lightly on Ranger's back, feeling the rhythm of strength and trust beneath the fur, and he knew that in these quiet minutes, the bond between them had deepened again, solidified by vigilance, patience, and the measured application of care. Nora sat beside the bassinet, exhausted but smiling through the relief that filled her chest and eyes. She brushed a loose strand of hair from Lily's forehead and whispered softly to her daughter, words that were half song, half prayer. Logan listened, feeling the weight of gratitude and awe settle over him, the kind that had nothing to do with words and everything to do with presence. Ranger lifted his head slightly, amber eyes moving from Logan to Lily to Nora and back, a sentinel keeping watch over two lives that had been fragile only hours ago. The hospital room was still, but not empty. It was filled with the small details that had preserved life. The pink blanket, carefully folded, the steady beeping of Lily's monitor, the faint hum of the heater, the light of the morning sun glancing off the clean linoleum floor. Logan allowed himself to lean back slightly, exhaling slowly, the tension of the morning leaving his shoulders in a steady release. Ranger shifted, paws stretching, tail flicking lightly against the floor, and Logan felt that same pulse of life, calm and steady, run through the room. Outside the window, the sky had cleared completely, a soft blue spreading across the morning, the clouds broken into fragments that drifted slowly across the horizon. The wind carried the scent of wet grass and pine from the surrounding trees, a reminder that the world continued beyond these walls, carrying with it the promise of ordinary mornings and the quiet joy of survival. Logan looked down at Lily again, tiny fingers flexing against the blanket, eyelids fluttering in sleep, and he felt a deep sense of reverence for the fragility and resilience intertwined in life. Ranger leaned closer, nose brushing the blanket, a silent affirmation that the child was safe under his watch. Nora placed a hand over Logan's, and the three of them sat together in the soft warmth of the hospital room, a tableau of care, attention, and unspoken gratitude. Logan's mind wandered briefly to the farmhouse, the broken crib, the scattered blankets, and the rain that had carved its quiet paths across the driveway and yard, and he realized that every detail, every moment, every instinct that had guided him and Ranger to this outcome mattered in ways invisible to anyone else, but essential to the lives they had preserved. Ranger's eyes met Logan's. Again, steady and calm, full of an intelligence that needed no words to be understood. Logan smiled slightly, a quiet acknowledgement passing between them, a mutual understanding of duty, trust, and the miraculous weight of small acts performed with care. Outside the hospital, the morning moved onward, cars passing, people walking, the faint sound of life returning to normal. Yet within this room, the world had contracted to a point of perfect presence, where each breath and heartbeat was measured, observed, and treasured. Logan closed his eyes for a moment, letting gratitude and relief wash over him in a steady rhythm. And when he opened them, Ranger's steady gaze and Lily's gentle breathing reminded him that some miracles were quiet, some guardians walked on four paws, and some moments, preserved with patience and love, would linger in memory like sunlight falling across the floor, gentle, warm, and unwavering. The nurse returned briefly to check Lily's vitals, smiling at the sight of Logan and Ranger together beside the bassinet, and Logan nodded silently, understanding that in this stillness, a lesson had been reaffirmed. Courage, loyalty, and attentive care could hold the weight